The morning air was crisp as Emily Chen stood at the entrance of Westlake Arts Academy, her new school. The tall brick building loomed over her, its windows reflecting the autumn sunlight. Her hands gripped the straps of her backpack tightly, her knuckles turning white. This was her third school in 2 years. Maybe this time would be different. A bell rang somewhere inside, making Emily jump. She was already late on her first day. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped into a wide hallway with polished floors that gleamed under fluorescent lights. The walls were lined with glass cases displaying trophies and photos of students performing on various instruments. Emily kept her eyes down and walked quickly past them. "You must be our new transfer student," a voice called from behind a desk. A woman with kind eyes and gray hair pulled into a loose bun smiled at her. "I'm Mrs. Patterson, the administrative assistant. We've been expecting you." Emily nodded and approached the desk. "Yes, I'm Emily Chen." "Welcome to Westlake, Emily. Let me get your schedule." Mrs. Patterson typed something into her computer and printed out a sheet of paper. "Your first class is already in session. Music theory with Mr. Whitmore in room 112. Emily glanced at the schedule and felt her stomach tighten. Piano was listed for her third period. She'd specifically asked to be placed in a beginner class, hoping to avoid any attention. The last thing she wanted was for anyone to know about her past. "Do you need help finding your way?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "No, thank you. I'll be fine," Emily replied softly, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. She followed the room numbers until she reached 112. Through the small window in the door, she could see about 20 students sitting at desks, all focused on a tall man, writing musical notations on a whiteboard. Emily hesitated, then knocked lightly. The talking inside stopped. The man turned and gestured for her to come in. Emily pushed the door open, feeling every eye in the room turned toward her. "Ah, you must be our new student," the man said. His voice was deep and carried across the room without effort. "I'm Mr. Whitmore." "I'm Emily Chen," she said, her voice barely audible. Mr. Whitmore checked his roster. "Yes, Emily Chen, transferred from—" He squinted at the paper. "Pinewood High School? Not a music school, correct?" "No, sir. Just a regular high school." "Well, this is not a regular high school, Ms. Chen. This is a school for serious musicians." His tone wasn't unkind, but it held a firmness that made Emily shrink a little. "Take a seat there next to Lily." A girl with short auburn hair and bright green eyes waved from the third row. Emily made her way over and slid into the empty desk. "Hi," Lily whispered as Mr. Whitmore returned to the whiteboard. "Don't mind him. He's tough but fair." Emily smiled weakly and took out a notebook. The class was discussing chord progressions, something she understood well, but she pretended to take careful notes as if it were all new to her. "Ms. Chen," Mr. Whitmore called suddenly. "Since you're joining us mid-semester, I'd like to gauge your knowledge. Can you tell me the difference between a perfect and an imperfect cadence?" Emily knew the answer immediately, but paused as if thinking. "A perfect cadence is when you go from the fifth chord to the first and it sounds complete. An imperfect cadence usually ends on the fifth chord and sounds unfinished," she answered, deliberately simplifying her explanation. Mr. Whitmore raised an eyebrow. "Correct, though somewhat basic. What instrument do you play, Ms. Chen?" "Piano," she replied, looking down at her desk. "Interesting. For how long?" "A few years." It wasn't exactly a lie. She had been playing for 15 years, which was indeed a few years if you looked at it broadly. "Well, you'll be evaluated in your piano class later today. Let's continue with our lesson." The rest of the class passed without Mr. Whitmore calling on her again. When the bell rang, Lily turned to her with a friendly smile. "What's your next class?" she asked. Emily checked her schedule. "Music history with Dr. Reynolds. Me too." "We can walk together," Lily offered. As they gathered their books, she added, "So you play piano? For a few years?" Emily nodded, following Lily into the busy hallway. "That's cool. I play violin, have been since I was 4. Most people here have been playing since they were little. Mr. Klein's piano class is pretty intense. He makes almost everyone cry at some point." Emily felt her chest tighten. "Is he my teacher?" "My schedule says Mr. Whitmore for piano, too." Lily looked surprised. "Really? Mr. Whitmore usually only teaches the advanced students. He must have a gap in his schedule this semester." They reached their music history class and found seats near the back. Dr. Reynolds was a small woman with bright energy who spoke passionately about Baroque composers. Emily found herself genuinely enjoying the class until the bell rang, signaling it was time for her piano evaluation. "Good luck," Lily said as they parted ways. "Text me later and tell me how it went." Emily headed to the music wing of the school, her steps getting slower as she approached room 135. Through the door, she could hear a student playing a piece by Debussy, the notes flowing like water. She waited until the music stopped and heard Mr. Whitmore's voice giving feedback before she knocked. "Come in," he called. The room was larger than a normal classroom, with a grand piano in the center and several upright pianos along the walls. A few students were gathered around Mr. Whitmore and the grand piano, apparently in the middle of a master class. "Ms. Chen, you're right on time," Mr. Whitmore said. "We're just finishing up. Please take a seat." Emily sat in a chair near the door, watching as a boy around her age finished receiving feedback on his playing. The other students took notes, occasionally asking questions. They all seemed so confident, so at home in this world of music that Emily had once belonged to. After the other students left, Mr. Whitmore gestured for Emily to come to the piano. "Since you're new and apparently have some background in piano, I need to assess your level to know where to place you in our curriculum," he explained, shuffling through some sheet music. "Have you performed in recitals before?" "A few small ones," Emily said, thinking of the packed concert halls and international competitions that had filled her childhood. "Let's start with something simple then. Do you know For Elise?" Emily nodded. Every beginner knew Beethoven's famous piece. "Please go ahead," Mr. Whitmore said, stepping back to give her space at the piano. Emily sat down, adjusting the bench out of habit. Her fingers hovered over the keys. It had been months since she'd played for anyone but herself. The familiar anxiety began to rise, but she pushed it down. This was just a simple piece, nothing like the complex concertos she used to perform. She began to play, deliberately making her performance competent but unremarkable. She added small hesitations where there should be none, simplified some of the dynamics, and kept her tempo slightly uneven, all the hallmarks of a student with potential but limited experience. Mr. Whitmore watched with a neutral expression. When she finished, he made some notes on a clipboard. "Not bad. Your technique is adequate, though your timing needs work. Your left hand is a bit weak and you rush the middle section," he said. None of those things were true, but Emily nodded as if accepting valuable feedback. "Let's try something a bit more challenging," he continued, placing a piece of sheet music in front of her. It was a Chopin waltz, one that Emily had mastered when she was 9. "Do you think you can sight read this?" Emily glanced at the music and pretended to study it carefully. "I can try," she said hesitantly. She played it as if she were truly sight reading, slowing down at the difficult passages, occasionally hitting a wrong note and simplifying some of the ornamentations. Mr. Whitmore stopped her halfway through. "That's enough. I think I understand your level now," he said, making more notes. "You have some natural talent, but you clearly need structured training. I'll place you with the intermediate students for now. You'll need to work on your basics, scales, arpeggios, and finger exercises." Emily felt a mix of relief and an unexpected pang of disappointment. This was what she wanted, to be underestimated, to escape the pressure of being known as a prodigy. Yet part of her wanted to place her hands back on the keys and show what she could really do. "Thank you," she said instead, standing up from the bench. "We have a recital at the end of the semester. All students participate, so you'll need to prepare a piece appropriate for your level. I suggest you start with something from the early classical period. Mozart or early Beethoven, perhaps." Emily nodded, knowing she could play the most difficult pieces from either composer with her eyes closed. "You'll practice in room 142 during this period starting tomorrow. The room has several uprights and you'll share with other intermediate students," Mr. Whitmore continued. "Do you have any questions?" "No, sir." "Very well. You're dismissed then." Emily left the room feeling strangely hollow. This was the first time in her life that someone had underestimated her musical ability, and she had deliberately caused it. As she walked to her next class, she wondered if she had made the right choice in coming to Westlake. She had wanted a fresh start, away from the pressure and expectations that had followed her since she was recognized as a child prodigy at age 6. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How's your first day going? Did they recognize you?" Emily typed back quickly. "Everything's fine. No one knows who I am. For now, at least." She could be just another student struggling to learn, rather than Emily Chen, the piano prodigy who had disappeared from the concert stage after a very public panic attack during a performance at Carnegie Hall last year. Here, she could breathe. Here, she could remember why she had fallen in love with music in the first place, before it became a burden too heavy to bear. She slipped her phone back into her pocket and headed to her next class, already wondering how long she could keep up the pretense, and whether she even wanted to. 3 weeks had passed since Emily's first day at Westlake Arts Academy. She settled into a routine that felt strange but somehow comforting. For the first time in years, no one expected perfection from her. No one whispered when she walked into a room. No one asked for her autograph or recorded her playing on their phones without permission. Each morning, she practiced in room 142 with 5 other intermediate students. The upright pianos were arranged in a circle, each student wearing headphones as they worked on their assigned pieces. Emily had been given Mozart's Sonata in C major K545, a piece she had mastered when she was 7. She deliberately practiced it with minor mistakes, occasionally asking Tyler, the student next to her, for help with a particularly tricky passage. "You're getting better," Tyler told her one morning, pushing his glasses up his nose. "That middle section was really smooth today." "Thanks," Emily replied with a small smile. "I've been practicing a lot at home." This was true, but what she practiced at home, late at night with the volume turned low on her digital piano, were the complex pieces she truly loved: Rachmaninoff's concertos, Liszt's etudes, and Chopin's ballads. Lily had become her closest friend at Westlake. They ate lunch together every day, joined by a few others from their music history class. Today they sat at their usual table in the corner of the cafeteria. "Did you hear about the assembly tomorrow?" asked David, a trumpet player with curly brown hair. "Apparently some famous pianist is coming to give a master class." Emily froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. "Who?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Some guy named Anton Baranov," David replied, scrolling through his phone. "Russian dude. Super famous, I guess." Emily relaxed slightly. She knew Anton. They had performed together at a festival in Vienna 2 years ago, but he was unlikely to recognize her. She had changed since then. Her hair was shorter. She wore glasses now instead of contacts, and she had lost the intense, haunted look that had characterized her final months on the concert circuit. "Are you okay?" Lily asked, noticing Emily's momentary tension. "You went pale for a second." "I'm fine," Emily assured her. "Just remembered I forgot to finish a music theory assignment." "Speaking of music theory," Tyler chimed in, "did you see Mr. Whitmore today? He's in a terrible mood. He made Rachel cry during her evaluation." Emily had noticed. Mr. Whitmore had been particularly harsh during their morning class, criticizing everyone's work with unusual sharpness. "I heard his star student Joshua dropped out of the young artist competition," said Lily. "Apparently he has tendinitis and can't play for at least a month. Mr. Whitmore was counting on him to win and boost the school's reputation." "When is the competition?" Emily asked. 2 weeks from now," David answered. "The deadline for entries is Friday, but nobody else is ready to perform at that level. Joshua was working on the Revolutionary Etude. None of the other advanced students can play it well enough to compete." Emily knew the piece they were talking about, Chopin's Etude Op. 10, the 12. She had performed it numerous times, including at her last public concert before her breakdown. The memory of that night flashed in her mind. The bright lights, the packed hall, the feeling of her chest constricting as she sat at the piano, unable to play a single note while hundreds of people watched in uncomfortable silence. "Earth to Emily." Lily waved a hand in front of her face. "You zoned out again." "Sorry," Emily said. "Just thinking about that etude. It's really hard. Have you heard it before?" Tyler asked. "I've seen videos online," Emily said quickly. "It looks impossible to play." After lunch, Emily headed to her piano class. The room was unusually quiet when she entered. The other intermediate students were already at their assigned pianos, but no one was playing. Mr. Whitmore stood at the front of the room, his arms crossed, looking more severe than usual. "Ms. Chen, you're late," he said, though she wasn't. "I'm sorry," she replied automatically, heading to her usual spot. "Before you begin your practice, I have an announcement," Mr. Whitmore continued, addressing the whole class. "As some of you may have heard, Joshua will not be representing our school at the Young Artist competition due to an injury. This is unfortunate timing. The way he said unfortunate made it sound like a much stronger word. Since we have no other advanced students prepared to perform the revolutionary etude at competition level, I will be holding auditions tomorrow for any intermediate or advanced student who thinks they might be capable of learning it in 2 weeks. This is, of course, highly unlikely, but I see no alternative. Emily's heart began to race. She could play that piece in her sleep. She had performed it to standing ovations in concert halls across Europe and Asia. But competing again would mean exposure, attention, pressure, all the things she had come to Westlake to escape. The auditions will take place during 6th period tomorrow. If you're interested, sign up on the sheet outside my office, Mr. Whitmore finished. Now return to your practice. The room filled with the muffled sounds of pianos as students put on their headphones and began to play. Emily sat motionless at her piano, staring at the keys. Aren't you going to practice, Ms. Chen? Mr. Whitmore asked, suddenly appearing beside her. Yes, sorry, she mumbled, putting on her headphones. She began to play her Mozart piece, her fingers moving automatically while her mind raced. After class, Emily stood in the hallway staring at the sign-up sheet outside Mr. Whitmore's office. Only 3 names were on it so far, all advanced students. She knew none of them could play the piece the way she could. Her hand hovered near the pen hanging by a string next to the sheet. Are you thinking of signing up? A voice asked from behind her. It was Rebecca, one of the advanced students, a tall girl with blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. No, I was just looking, Emily said, stepping back. Rebecca gave her a dismissive glance. Good. No offense, but the intermediate students don't stand a chance. This piece is far beyond your level. Emily bit her tongue to stop herself from responding. Rebecca signed her name with a flourish and walked away, her posture perfect as befitted a serious pianist. The next day, the entire school gathered in the auditorium for Anton Baranov's master class. Emily sat in the back row, partially hidden behind taller students. The famous pianist spoke about his career and technique, then invited 3 advanced students to play for him and receive feedback. As the 3rd student finished playing, Anton asked, "Are there any questions from the audience?" Several hands went up. Emily kept hers firmly in her lap, trying to make herself invisible. But then Anton's gaze swept over the auditorium and stopped, his eyes widening slightly as they landed on her. Emily looked down quickly, but it was too late. "Emily?" Anton called out. "Emily Chen? Is that you?" A hush fell over the auditorium. Every head turned, trying to locate who he was talking to. Emily considered pretending she wasn't there, but she knew it was futile. Slowly, she raised her hand. "It is you," Anton exclaimed, smiling broadly. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have a true prodigy among you." Emily Chen was one of the most promising young pianists in the world before she took a break. "Come down here, Emily, play something for us." Emily felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. Her carefully constructed anonymity was shattered in an instant. She stood up shakily, aware of the stunned looks from her classmates. As she made her way down the aisle, she heard whispers rippling through the crowd. "That quiet girl is Emily Chen? The Emily Chen? I thought she had a breakdown or something. I have her recordings on my playlist." Mr. Whitmore stood near the stage, his expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. As Emily passed him, he asked in a low voice, "Is this true, Ms. Chen? Are you the Emily Chen who performed with the Vienna Philharmonic last year?" Emily nodded, unable to speak. The shame of her deception mixed with the familiar anxiety that rose whenever she thought about performing in public again. Anton waited for her on stage, arms open for a hug that Emily reluctantly accepted. "I was so worried when you disappeared," he said quietly. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she said automatically. "But I don't play anymore. Not like that." "Nonsense," Anton said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Once a pianist, always a pianist. Come, just one piece." Emily looked out at the sea of faces staring up at her. She saw Lily's shocked expression, Tyler's open-mouthed surprise, and Rebecca's disbelief. But it was Mr. Whitmore's face that caught her attention, the dawning realization that he had assigned Mozart's simplest sonata to a girl who had once played Rachmaninoff's Third Concerto with the New York Philharmonic. "Please." "I can't," Emily whispered, feeling the familiar tightness in her chest. Anton sensed her distress and leaned closer. "Just a short piece," he coaxed. Something simple. For me, not for them. Emily looked at the gleaming grand piano on the stage. It had been so long since she had played on a proper concert grand. Before she could think better of it, she sat down on the bench and placed her hands on the keys. The audience waited in tense silence. Emily closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to play. Not the flashy, technically demanding pieces she was known for, but Debussy's Clair de Lune, gentle, flowing, and deeply expressive. She played it simply, without showmanship, letting the music speak for itself. When she finished, there was a moment of complete silence before the auditorium erupted in applause. Emily opened her eyes to see Mr. Whitmore staring at her with an unreadable expression. Anton was beaming beside her. "There," he said, helping her to her feet. "That wasn't so hard, was it?" But it was. Emily's hands were shaking and she felt lightheaded. As soon as she could, she slipped away from Anton and hurried backstage, looking for a quiet place to collect herself. She found an empty practice room and sank onto a chair, her head in her hands. The door opened a few minutes later, and Mr. Whitmore entered, closing it quietly behind him. "Ms. Chen," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "I think we need to talk." Emily looked up at him, expecting anger or accusation for her deception. Instead, she saw something like understanding in his eyes. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" he asked. Emily took a shaky breath. "Because I didn't want to be her anymore. I just wanted to be normal for once." Mr. Whitmore nodded slowly. "I see, and now?" "Now everyone knows," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "And everything will be different again." "Yes," he agreed. "But perhaps in ways you don't expect." He hesitated, then asked, "The young artist competition? You could win it easily with the revolutionary etude." Emily shook her head. "That's exactly what I came here to avoid. The pressure, the expectations, the fear of failing publicly again." Mr. Whitmore was quiet for a moment. "What if," he said carefully, "we approach it differently this time? Not as a stepping stone to fame or validation, but as a personal challenge, something just for you?" Emily looked at him skeptically. "Is that even possible?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I'd like to help you try, if you're willing." Outside the practice room, Emily could hear people searching for her, calling her name. Her new reality was waiting. She had two choices: run away again or face it on her own terms. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Mr. Whitmore nodded. "That's all I ask." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Miss Chen, that was the most beautiful Clair de Lune I've ever heard." As he left, Emily remained seated at the piano, her fingers resting lightly on the keys. The path ahead was unclear, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a small flicker of something she had thought was lost forever. The desire to play not for others, but for herself. By the next morning, everyone at Westlake knew Emily's secret. As she walked through the hallways, conversations stopped. People stared and whispered. Some students who had never spoken to her before suddenly wanted to be her friend. Others, particularly some of the advanced piano students, avoided her completely. Lily caught up with Emily as she was putting books in her locker. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice hurt rather than angry. "I thought we were friends." Emily closed her locker and leaned against it. "We are friends. That's why I didn't tell you. I wanted you to like me for me, not because I was that person." "What person?" "The amazing pianist who played at Carnegie Hall? The girl whose recordings I've actually listened to?" Lily shook her head. "That's still you, Emily." "No, it's not," Emily said quietly. "That girl was miserable. She had panic attacks before performances. She couldn't sleep for days before concerts. She finally broke down in front of 1,000 people and couldn't play a single note." Lily's expression softened. "I didn't know it was that bad. Nobody did. They just saw the girl who could play difficult pieces perfectly. They didn't see everything else." Emily sighed. "Anyway, now everyone knows and everything will go back to how it was before." "It doesn't have to," Lily insisted. "This isn't the professional world. It's just school." Before Emily could respond, the first bell rang. "I have to get to class," she said, grateful for the interruption.
"See you at lunch?"
"Of course," Lily replied with a small smile. Emily's first class that day was music theory with Mr. Whitmore. When she entered the classroom, all eyes turned to her. She kept her head down and headed for her usual seat. But Mr. Whitmore called her name. "Ms. Chen, a word, please." She approached his desk. aware of everyone watching. "I've reconsidered your placement," he said, handing her a new schedule. "You'll be joining the advanced theory class starting today, and I've adjusted your piano sessions as well." Emily looked at the paper. "Private lessons? With you? 3 times a week," Mr. Whitmore confirmed. "The rest of the time, you'll have access to the practice rooms usually reserved for our most advanced students. Each room has a grand piano, not those uprights you've been using. But I don't— This is non-negotiable, Ms. Chen," he interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. "Your talent demands proper instruction, and I would be failing as a teacher if I didn't provide it." Emily wanted to argue but knew it was pointless. This was exactly what she had feared, being treated differently once people knew who she was. She took the schedule and returned to her seat for the remainder of the class. Later that day, Emily found herself in a small practice room with a beautiful Steinway grand piano. The room had perfect acoustics with wood-paneled walls and large windows overlooking the school's garden. It was a far cry from the crowded space with 6 upright pianos where she had been practicing for the past 3 weeks. She sat at the piano, running her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down. The ivory felt cool and familiar under her fingertips. Despite everything, she had missed this, a quality instrument that could express every nuance of the music she heard in her head. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "It was Mr. Whitmore. Your first private lesson isn't until tomorrow," Emily said. "I know. I came to talk about the young artist competition." He closed the door behind him and sat in a chair across from the piano. "The deadline for entries is tomorrow." Emily shook her head. "I already told you I'm not competing." "You haven't played the Revolutionary Etude in almost a year, correct?" "Not since I stopped performing." Mr. Whitmore nodded. "Play it for me. Not as a performance, just a run-through, to see if you remember it." Emily hesitated. The piece held difficult memories. It was what she had been scheduled to play the night of her breakdown. But part of her was curious to see if she could still play it, here in this quiet room with only Mr. Whitmore listening. "Fine," she said, "but this doesn't mean I'm entering the competition." Mr. Whitmore nodded and waited. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, recalling the piece in her mind. Then she began to play. The powerful opening chords filled the room, followed by the cascading left-hand runs that gave the piece its revolutionary character. Her fingers remembered what to do, finding the complex patterns automatically. As she played, she lost herself in the music, forgetting where she was and who was listening. When she finished, her heart was racing, but not from anxiety. It was from the pure rush of playing something so demanding and beautiful at full capacity, after holding back for so long. Mr. Whitmore was silent for a long moment. "That," he finally said, "was extraordinary." Emily looked down at her hands. It was sloppy in places. The middle section especially. "Nothing that can't be polished in 2 weeks," Mr. Whitmore replied. "Emily, you have a gift that few people in this world possess. I understand why you stepped away. The pressure at such a young age must have been overwhelming. But music is clearly part of who you are." "Playing for myself is different than performing," Emily insisted. "Is it? What you just did, was that not performing? You played for me and you played magnificently. That's different. You're just one person and I trust you, I guess," she admitted, surprising herself with the realization. Mr. Whitmore smiled slightly. "Then perhaps that's where we start. Playing for people you trust in small settings, on your own terms. The competition isn't a small setting. There will be judges, an audience, other competitors, yes, but you'll be playing for yourself, not for them. Not for rankings or recognition or to please your parents or managers, just to reclaim this piece that once defeated you." Emily considered his words. The idea of facing the Revolutionary Etude again, of overcoming the fear associated with it, was strangely appealing. But the thought of doing it publicly still made her stomach knot with anxiety. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Sleep on it," Mr. Whitmore suggested, standing up. "The deadline is tomorrow afternoon. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." After he left, Emily remained at the piano. She played the opening of the etude again, then stopped. Could she really do this? Return to performing after her very public breakdown? The music world had a long memory. People would be watching, waiting for her to fail again. At lunch, she sat with Lily and their friends as usual, but the dynamic had changed. Tyler kept asking her questions about famous pianists she had met. David wanted to know what it was like to play with orchestras. Even Lily seemed different, treating Emily with a subtle new deference that made her uncomfortable. "Can we just talk about normal stuff?" Emily finally asked. "Like what's for dessert or the weird substitute teacher in English?" Her friends exchanged glances. Then Tyler nodded. "Sure. Did you guys hear that Ms. Patterson is making everyone rewrite their essays because someone plagiarized?" The conversation shifted, and for a few minutes things felt almost normal again. But as they were finishing lunch, Rebecca approached their table, her expression tight. "Is it true you're entering the competition?" she asked Emily without preamble. Emily shook her head. "I haven't decided yet." "Well, some of us have been working toward this for years," Rebecca said, her voice sharp. "It's not fair for you to swoop in at the last minute just because you're Emily Chen." "I never said I was entering," Emily repeated. "But you're thinking about it, aren't you? After hiding who you really are for weeks, now you'll take the spotlight because it suits you." Rebecca's voice was rising, drawing attention from nearby tables. "Some of us don't have famous names or connections. Some of us have to work twice as hard just to be noticed." Emily felt her face grow hot with embarrassment and anger. "You don't know anything about me or what I've been through. I know you lied to everyone here. I know you pretended to be less than you are. Was it fun playing at being normal? Slumming with the regular students who actually have to practice to be good?" "That's enough, Rebecca," Lily interjected, standing up. "You're being unfair." "Unfair? Like having to compete against a professional pianist in a student competition. Yeah, that's unfair." Rebecca turned and walked away, several other advanced students following her. Emily sat frozen, Rebecca's words echoing in her head. Had she been dishonest? Was she being selfish? "Don't listen to her," David said. "She's just jealous." "But she's right about some things," Emily said quietly. "I did lie to everyone, and it would be unfair for me to enter a competition meant for students who are still learning. The competition is open to anyone under 18 who isn't currently signed with a professional management company," Tyler pointed out. "You qualify. Technically, maybe. But Rebecca's right. I've had opportunities and training that most students haven't." "So what are you going to do?" Lily asked. Emily shook her head. "I don't know." That evening, Emily practiced later than usual. The school allowed students to use the facilities until 9 o'clock, and she took full advantage, working through pieces she hadn't played in months. It felt good to push herself again, to play at her full capacity without pretending to struggle. As she was gathering her things to leave, she heard piano music coming from another practice room. Curious, she followed the sound. Through the small window in the door, she could see Rebecca, still in her school uniform, practicing the revolutionary etude. Her face was intense with concentration, and her fingers moved quickly over the keys, but she kept stopping at the same difficult passage, trying again and again without success. Emily watched her for several minutes. Rebecca was good, better than Emily had given her credit for. She was clearly talented and hardworking, but the etude was just beyond her current abilities, especially with only 2 weeks to perfect it. As Rebecca hit the wrong notes again and slammed her hands down in frustration, Emily made a decision. She knocked lightly on the door. Rebecca looked up, her expression hardening when she saw who it was. "What do you want?" Emily entered the room hesitantly. "I heard you practicing. The etude is difficult." "I don't need your help," Rebecca said coldly. "I'm not offering help. I'm letting you know that I've decided not to enter the competition." Rebecca looked surprised. "Why not?" "Because of what I said." "Partly," Emily admitted, "but mostly because you were right. It wouldn't be fair. This competition should be for students who are still developing, not for someone who's already performed professionally." Rebecca studied her for a moment. "But you could win easily. Mr. Whitmore would be thrilled. The school would get recognition." "Those aren't good reasons for me to compete," Emily said. "Anyway, I've made my decision. The spot is yours if you want it." Rebecca turned back to the piano. "The passage in measures 37 to 42 is giving me trouble." Emily hesitated, then approached the piano. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the bench. After a moment, Rebecca slid over, making room. Emily sat down and played the passage slowly. "The trick is in the left hand. If you establish the pattern correctly, the right hand will follow more easily," she demonstrated, breaking down the difficult section. Rebecca watched intently, her earlier hostility fading as she focused on the music. "Like this?" she asked, trying the passage herself. Almost. Try again, but keep your wrist more relaxed here. Emily demonstrated again. They worked on the passage for nearly half an hour, until Rebecca could play it cleanly if not yet at full speed. Thank you, Rebecca said finally, her voice softer than Emily had ever heard it. I still have a lot of work to do before the competition. You can do it, Emily told her, surprised to find she meant it. Your technique is solid. You just need confidence. As she walked home that night, Emily felt lighter than she had in months. For the first time since her breakdown, she had engaged with music without fear or pretense. She had made a decision that felt right for her, not based on others' expectations. Her phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Whitmore. Have you decided about the competition? Emily typed back, Yes, I'm not entering. But I would still like those private lessons if that's okay. His reply came quickly. My office, 3:30 tomorrow. Bring Beethoven's Appassionata. Let's see what you can really do. Emily smiled as she put her phone away. She wasn't ready for competitions or public performances yet, but she was ready to stop hiding who she was and what she loved. It was a start. The weeks following Emily's revealed identity were a strange mixture of challenges and unexpected freedoms. Though she had decided not to enter the young artist competition, she threw herself into her music with renewed passion. Her private lessons with Mr. Whitmore became the highlight of her week. Unlike her previous teachers who had pushed her toward ever more difficult pieces to impress audiences, Mr. Whitmore focused on interpretation and expression. Technical perfection is merely the starting point, he told her during one session as they worked on Beethoven's Appassionata. What makes a performance memorable is what the pianist brings of themselves to the music. Emily was sitting at the grand piano, replaying a particularly emotional passage. My old teacher used to say that the composer's intentions were all that mattered. That adding personal interpretation was disrespectful to the music. Mr. Whitmore shook his head. Music isn't meant to be preserved like a museum piece. It's a living art that exists in conversation with the performer and the audience. Beethoven himself was known for his improvisational skills. Do you think he played his pieces exactly the same way twice? This approach was liberating for Emily. For years, she had been trained to execute pieces with machine-like precision, focusing on technique over feeling. Now she was rediscovering the joy of playing for its own sake. One afternoon, as Emily was leaving her lesson, she ran into Rebecca in the hallway. The competition was in 3 days, and Rebecca looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. How's the etude coming? Emily asked. Rebecca gave a tight smile. Better. Not perfect, but better. I could listen if you want, Emily offered. Sometimes a fresh perspective helps. Rebecca hesitated. The tension between them had eased since Emily's decision not to compete, but they weren't exactly friends. Actually, that would be helpful. I have the practice room for another hour. Emily followed her to the practice room and sat in a chair by the wall. Rebecca positioned herself at the piano, took a deep breath, and began to play. Her performance of the revolutionary etude was technically solid but cautious, as if she was afraid of making mistakes. When she finished, Emily nodded thoughtfully. Your technique is good. You've clearly worked hard on the difficult passages. But, Rebecca prompted, sensing Emily's hesitation, but you're playing it safe. This piece is about passion, about revolution. It needs more fire, Rebecca frowned. I can't afford to make mistakes at the competition. Sometimes you have to risk mistakes to create something special, Emily said, then immediately felt hypocritical. Wasn't fear of mistakes exactly what had driven her from the stage? Rebecca seemed to read her thoughts. That's easy for you to say. You've already proven yourself. I'm still trying to show what I can do. Emily moved to the piano. May I? When Rebecca nodded, she played just the opening section of the etude, putting all the emotion she felt into it, the anger, the passion, the defiance. That's what this piece is about. Not playing the right notes, but saying something with them. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. I've heard recordings of you playing this, she admitted. I listened to them while preparing. You make it sound alive. You can too, Emily assured her. Just stop thinking about the judges and play it like you're telling a story. Rebecca nodded slowly. I'll try. She gathered her music. Thanks, Emily, I mean it. As Rebecca left, Lily poked her head into the practice room. There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. What's up? Emily asked, closing the piano. Remember that community outreach program I told you about? Where we perform at retirement homes and children's hospitals. Lily's eyes were bright with excitement. Well, we're doing a small concert at Oak Ridge Retirement Community this Saturday, and we're short a pianist. Our usual guy has the flu. Emily felt a jolt of anxiety. I don't know, Lily. It's super casual, Lily rushed to add. Just a few easy pieces to accompany some singers. No pressure, tiny audience, mostly people who are just happy to have live music. Please, we're desperate. Emily thought about it. A small informal performance might be a good first step back into playing for others. What would I have to play? Just some simple accompaniment for 4 songs. We can rehearse tomorrow after school. Okay, Emily said, surprising herself. I'll do it. Lily squealed and hugged her. Thank you. This is going to be great. The next day after school, Emily met with the small group of musicians in the choir room. Besides Lily on violin, there was a cellist named Danny, a clarinet player named Wei, and 2 singers, Zoe, a soprano, and Carlos, a baritone. They ran through the program, 2 classical pieces and 2 folk songs arranged for their small ensemble. The music was simple compared to what Emily was used to playing, but she enjoyed the collaborative aspect. In her previous performing life, she had mostly played solo, the center of attention. Being part of an ensemble where everyone contributed equally was refreshing. You're really good, Wei commented during a break. Like professional good? She is professional, Lily said before Emily could respond. She's played with major orchestras. The others looked at Emily with newfound interest. Seriously? Carlos asked. Then why are you doing our little community concert? Emily shrugged, feeling uncomfortable with the attention. I'm just helping out a friend. Well, we're lucky to have you, Zoe said warmly. With you playing, we sound 10 times better. Saturday arrived and Emily found herself sitting in a van with the other musicians, heading to Oak Ridge Retirement Community. Her stomach fluttered with nerves. But it wasn't the paralyzing anxiety she had experienced before major performances in the past. This was different, a gentle nervousness that felt almost energizing. The retirement home had a modest community room with a well-used upright piano. About 30 residents were seated in chairs arranged in rows, with some staff members standing at the back. It was about as far from Carnegie Hall as one could get. But as Emily sat at the piano and adjusted the bench, she felt an unexpected sense of purpose. Their small concert began with a Mozart piece, followed by a folk song that had several of the residents humming along. Emily found herself relaxing as they played, enjoying the immediate connection with this small, appreciative audience. There were no critics here, no judges, no expectations of perfection, just people enjoying live music. After their final piece, the audience applauded warmly. An elderly woman in the front row called out, "Could you play something else, dear? Something just on the piano?" Emily froze. She hadn't prepared a solo piece. Lily looked at her questioningly. "You don't have to," Lily whispered, but Emily was already considering what to play. Not a showy piece to demonstrate her technical skills, but something beautiful and meaningful. "I think I will," she said quietly. She turned to the piano and began to play Debussy's Clair de Lune, the same piece she had performed at the school assembly. As the gentle, flowing notes filled the room, she noticed the residents closing their eyes, some smiling, others swaying slightly to the music. She wasn't performing for them. She was sharing something beautiful with them. The distinction felt important. When she finished, there was a moment of appreciative silence before the applause began. The elderly woman in the front row had tears in her eyes. "That was lovely, my dear. Just lovely." After the concert, as they were packing up their instruments, the activities director approached Emily. "That was wonderful," she said. "Would you consider coming back sometime? The residents would love it." Before she could overthink it, Emily nodded. "I'd like that." On the ride back to school, Emily sat quietly, looking out the window. Playing for the retirement home residents had awakened something in her, a reminder of why she had fallen in love with music in the first place. Not for the acclaim or the prestige, but for the way it connected people. Monday morning brought news of the Young Artist competition. Rebecca had placed second overall, an impressive achievement for Westlake. Emily sought her out to congratulate her. "You were right," Rebecca told her when they met in the hallway. "I stopped worrying so much about mistakes and just played. The judges said my interpretation was compelling." "That's great," Emily said sincerely. Second place is amazing. The girl who won was unbelievable, Rebecca admitted. But next year I'm aiming for first. As they walked to class together, Rebecca asked, "Will you compete next year?" Emily considered the question. "I don't know. Maybe, on my own terms, though." When Emily arrived at her private lesson that afternoon, Mr. Whitmore was waiting with an unusual request. "I'd like you to play for my beginning piano class tomorrow," he said. "Nothing complex, just demonstrate proper technique and answer some questions." Emily hesitated. "I'm not sure I'm the right person to teach beginners." "You're exactly the right person," Mr. Whitmore insisted. "You have impeccable technique and a growing ability to communicate what music means to you. Besides, teaching is an excellent way to solidify your own understanding." "I'll try," Emily agreed hesitantly. The next day, she found herself in front of 12 young students, ages 11 to 13, all looking at her with wide eyes. Mr. Whitmore had introduced her as a special guest, mentioning her accomplishments, briefly but emphasizing that she was there to help them with basics. "Could you show us the proper hand position?" Mr. Whitmore prompted. Emily sat at the piano and demonstrated, explaining how to keep the wrists relaxed and fingers curved. The students watched intently, some trying to mimic her position. "Now perhaps a scale to show the proper finger crossings." Emily played a C major scale, slowly and deliberately, then had the students try it one by one. She found herself enjoying their small victories, a smooth crossing of the thumb and even tempo maintained throughout. Their struggles reminded her of her own early days at the piano, before playing became a profession rather than a joy. A small boy named Leo was having particular difficulty with his finger crossings. Emily knelt beside him at the keyboard. "Think of it like a little dance your fingers are doing," she suggested. "Your thumb needs to be ready to move under before your third finger plays its note." Leo tried again, concentrating hard. When he managed a smooth crossing, his face lit up with pride. "I did it!" "You did?" Emily confirmed, smiling. "That's exactly right." At the end of the class, Mr. Whitmore asked, "Any questions for Miss Chen?" A girl with curly hair raised her hand. "Did you always love playing the piano?" The question caught Emily off guard with its simplicity. "Yes," she answered honestly. "But sometimes I forgot that I loved it because I was so focused on being perfect. That's something I'm trying to remember now, to play for love, not for perfection." As the students filed out, Mr. Whitmore regarded her thoughtfully. "You have a gift for teaching," he observed. "You might consider it as part of your relationship with music moving forward." Emily hadn't thought of teaching as a possibility. Her career had always been focused on performing. But working with the beginning students had been satisfying in an unexpected way. That evening, Emily practiced late again. But instead of focusing on the complex pieces Mr. Whitmore had assigned, she found herself playing simple pieces from her childhood. The first Bach minuet she had learned, a Clementi sonatina, a Schumann piece from Album for the Young. Each held memories of when playing had been pure joy, before the pressure of competitions and concerts. As she played the final notes of Schumann's Träumerei, she realized something important. She didn't have to choose between being Emily Chen, piano prodigy, and Emily Chen, ordinary student. She could create a new identity that incorporated both, someone who played for the love of music, who shared that love with others, and who defined success on her own terms. She wasn't ready to return to the concert stage yet. The thought still triggered anxiety, but small steps like playing at the retirement home, helping Rebecca, and teaching beginners were showing her a different path forward, one where music was a gift to be shared, not a burden to be carried. It wasn't a complete answer, but it was a beginning, and for now that was enough. Spring arrived at Westlake Arts Academy, bringing with it the scent of flowers and the buzz of end-of-year preparations. 3 months had passed since Emily's identity had been revealed, and in that time, she had created a new routine for herself, one that balanced her extraordinary abilities with her desire for normalcy. Twice a week, she joined Lily and the small ensemble for community performances. They had expanded beyond the retirement home to include children's hospitals, community centers, and once, memorably, a farmer's market where they played as people shopped for fresh produce. Emily found joy in these casual performances where the music was shared, not showcased. She continued her private lessons with Mr. Whitmore, pushing herself to explore new pieces and new interpretations. and once a week she helped with the beginning piano class, guiding young students through their first encounters with the instrument she loved. What she hadn't done was perform solo in a formal setting. The spring recital was approaching, the major event of the school year where every student would perform. Emily had been avoiding thinking about it, but Mr. Whitmore finally brought it up during their lesson. "You haven't submitted your piece for the recital program," he said as Emily practiced a Chopin nocturne. Her fingers faltered on the keys. "I was thinking of accompanying Lily for her violin piece instead of doing a solo." Mr. Whitmore shook his head. "Lily already has an accompanist. Besides, you're primarily a pianist, not an accompanist." "I don't think I'm ready," Emily admitted. "Not for a formal recital with programs and an audience expecting Emily Chen." Mr. Whitmore considered her for a moment. "What are you afraid of exactly? You've been playing for audiences all semester." "That's different. Those are casual performances where no one knows who I am, or small groups here at school who know me as a person, not just a name." Emily stared at her hands. "A formal recital means critics, expectations, judgment." "There won't be critics at a school recital," Mr. Whitmore pointed out gently. "Just families, friends, and fellow students. But there will be expectations," Emily insisted. "People have heard about me. They'll come expecting perfection, and if I make even the smallest mistake—" "Then you'll have made a mistake," Mr. Whitmore interrupted. "And the world will continue turning." Emily looked up at him, surprised by his bluntness. "Emily," he continued more softly, "part of why you struggled before was that you believed a mistake would be catastrophic. But that's not true. Think about the performances you've most enjoyed attending. Were they technically perfect?" Emily thought about it. "Not always. But they were honest, emotional. The performer seemed connected to the music." "Exactly. Technical perfection is admirable, but it's not what moves people." Mr. Whitmore stood up and walked to the window. "I'm not going to force you to perform at the recital. But I think it would be good for you, not as Emily Chen prodigy, but as Emily Chen, musician who has something to say through her music." After he left, Emily remained at the piano thinking about his words. Was she being a coward, or sensibly protective of her mental health? The line between the two wasn't always clear. That evening at dinner, she broached the subject with her parents. Since her identity had been revealed at school, she had gradually opened up to them about her struggles, about the anxiety that had been building long before her public breakdown. "Dad, Mom, Mr. Whitmore wants me to perform at the spring recital." Her father put down his fork. "As a soloist?" Emily nodded. "Do you want to?" her mother asked carefully. Both her parents had been walking on eggshells around the topic of her performing since her breakdown, afraid of pushing her back into a situation that had caused her so much pain. "I don't know," Emily admitted. "Part of me misses it, performing for an audience that's really listening. But another part of me is terrified of going through that again." "The panic attacks?" her father asked. Emily nodded. "What if I freeze again? What if I can't play a single note?" Her mother reached across the table and took her hand. "Then you'll walk off stage and we'll take you home and we'll love you just the same. We've learned our lesson too," her father added. "We got caught up in your success and the opportunities and the acclaim. We forgot to check if you were happy." "I was happy," Emily said. "At least at first. I loved playing. I still do. I don't know how to separate the joy of playing from the fear of failing." "Maybe you don't have to perform," her mother suggested. "You could focus on teaching or composing or just playing for yourself." "But that feels like letting fear win," Emily said, surprising herself with the realization. "And I'm tired of being afraid." Her parents exchanged glances. "Whatever you decide," her father said, "we're with you. No pressure either way." The next day at school, Emily sought out Lily during lunch. "Can I ask you something?" "About performing?" Lily looked up from her sandwich. "Sure, what's up?" "Do you ever get nervous? Before a performance?" "All the time," Lily admitted readily. "I get sweaty palms, my heart races, sometimes I feel like I might throw up." Emily was surprised by her candor. "How do you handle it?" "I remind myself why I'm playing. Because I love it, because I have something to share. And I accept that I might make mistakes, but that doesn't mean the whole performance is ruined." Lily tilted her head. "Are you thinking about the recital?" Emily nodded. "Mr. Whitmore wants me to do a solo." "That would be amazing," Lily said, her eyes lighting up. The whole school would come to hear you. That's what I'm afraid of, Emily confessed. The expectations, Lily considered this. What if you played something unexpected? Not one of your famous pieces, but something different. Something that's just you. Emily thought about this. She had been trained to play the grand, technically demanding pieces that showcased virtuosity. The Liszts, the Rachmaninoffs, the Chopins. But there were other pieces she loved. Pieces that spoke to her heart rather than her fingers. That's actually a good idea, she said slowly. Play something no one would expect from Emily Chen, the prodigy. Exactly, Lily grinned. Surprise them, on your terms. That afternoon, Emily stayed late in the practice room exploring pieces she loved but had never performed publicly. She was so engrossed that she didn't notice someone at the door until they knocked lightly. It was Anton Baranov, the famous pianist who had recognized her months ago. I hope I'm not interrupting, he said. I'm back for another masterclass tomorrow and heard you were practicing. Emily stood up, surprised. It's good to see you again. How have you been? Very well. But more importantly, how have you been? Mr. Whitmore tells me you've been playing again, though not on the concert circuit. Emily nodded. Just small performances. Community outreach, mostly. Anton sat down in a chair near the piano. May I hear what you're working on? Emily hesitated, then nodded. She sat back down at the piano and began to play the piece she had been exploring. Ravel's Pavane pour une enfant défunte, a haunting, gentle work that required sensitivity rather than technical fireworks. When she finished, Anton was quiet for a moment. That was beautiful, he finally said. Different from what you used to play, but more you somehow. That's what I'm trying to find, Emily admitted. My own voice, not just technical brilliance. The best musicians have both, Anton said. But they develop in their own time. You were pushed toward technical perfection very young. Perhaps now is the time to develop the other aspects of your musicianship. I'm thinking of playing this for the school recital, Emily told him. It's not what people would expect. All the better, Anton smiled. Art should surprise. Challenge expectations. After he left, Emily continued practicing, focusing on bringing out the emotional nuances of the piece. It wasn't technically difficult for her, which allowed her to concentrate on expression rather than notes. The night of the recital arrived quickly. The school auditorium was packed with students, parents, teachers, and Emily noticed with a flutter of anxiety a few people she recognized from the classical music world, likely drawn by the rumor that she would be performing. Backstage, students warmed up and adjusted their formal attire. Mr. Whitmore moved among them, offering last-minute advice and encouragement. When he reached Emily, he simply asked, "Ready?" She nodded, surprised to find that it was true. She was nervous, yes, but not paralyzed. This was her choice, her piece, her statement. The recital began with the younger students, followed by intermediate and then advanced performances. Rebecca played brilliantly, her confidence having grown over the months. Lily's violin soared in a Bach partita. Finally, it was Emily's turn. As she walked onto the stage, the audience's applause held a special quality. Expectant, curious. She could practically feel them wondering what piece she would play. Something virtuosic and dazzling, the revolutionary etude that had defeated her a year ago. Emily sat at the piano and took a deep breath. Without announcement, she began to play Ravel's Pavane. The piece started softly, almost tentatively, like a question being asked. As she played, Emily focused not on the audience or their expectations, but on the beauty of the music itself, the gentle melody, the subtle harmonies, the bittersweet quality that had drawn her to the piece. She played with her eyes closed at times, lost in the music, forgetting to be afraid. When the final notes faded away, there was a moment of complete silence before the applause began, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. Emily opened her eyes to see the audience rising to their feet. Mr. Whitmore was the first to stand, his eyes shining with pride. Lily was clapping wildly while Rebecca offered a respectful nod. Emily's parents were in the front row, her mother wiping away tears. As Emily stood to acknowledge the applause, she noticed Anton Baranov standing at the back of the auditorium. He gave her a small bow, one artist acknowledging another. The applause continued, but it felt different from what she had experienced in the past. This wasn't adulation for technical brilliance or awe at a prodigy's skills. This was appreciation for a musician who had